Time now for the top of the news. A Jordanian soldier serving a life sentence for killing 7 Israeli schoolgirls in a 1997 shooting rampage, released after serving 20 years in prison as allowed under Jordanian law.
Heavy rain. A warning is there still in effect for northern New Zealand after a week of torrential rain and high winds there. Look at that flooding. It caused landslides and blackouts too. So far, though, thankfully, there have been no serious injuries reported.
And Eric, thousands of people taking part in rallies in more than 40 cities across Europe today, voicing their support for the European Union after the UK's Brexit vote. Protesters say politicians opposing the EU do not represent the majority of European citizens. And President Trump's revised travel ban set to go into effect Thursday, but a court hearing in Hawaii the day before could put a halt to that. This new version of the travel ban places a 90-day ban on people from 6 mainly Muslim nations and a 120-day ban on all refugees. Will Carr is live in our West Coast Bureau with the latest on this story. Will?
Hey there, Arthel. The administration and independent legal experts both feel the new ban is on stronger legal grounds than the first, which was blocked by a federal court. The revised order will put the brakes on new visas for travelers from Somalia, Iran, Syria, Sudan, Libya, and Yemen. Unlike the first order, current visa holders won't be impacted, and Iraq has been taken off the list. But even with the changes, there's still backlash. On Friday, more than 130 foreign policy experts, many from the Obama administration, wrote a letter to President Trump condemning the ban. Part of the letter states, to Muslims, including those victimized by or fighting against ISIS, it will send a message that reinforces the propaganda of ISIS and other extremist groups that falsely claim the United States is at war with Islam. The Attorney General in Hawaii, who will challenge the new ban this week, has even stronger words.
In other words, it's saying if you're from one of these 6 countries, now 6, you are presumptively a terrorist.
Until we meet again.
Massive protests took place at airports across the country after the initial ban, but members of the administration have maintained from the beginning that this is all about keeping Americans safe. Take a listen to Attorney General Jeff Sessions.
Knowledge is power, but using it
wisely. In fact, today more than
is the
300 people, according to the FBI, who came here as refugees are under an FBI investigation today for potential terrorism-related activities.
The ban is set to start on Thursday. Arthel.
Will Carr, thank you so much, Will. Eric?
Oh, I thought we could learn more about the critical parts of the Republican health care plan this week. The Congressional Budget Office is expected to release its analysis in the coming days, perhaps as early as tomorrow. That report will outline the cost and potential impact of the plan on the healthcare industry. Meanwhile, the White House is already going on the defensive about it, noting that the CBO has been wrong about healthcare estimates before.
If the CBO was right about Obamacare to begin with, there'd be 8 million more people on Obamacare today than there actually are. So I love the folks at the CBO. They work really hard. They do, but sometimes we ask them to do stuff they're not capable of doing. And estimating the impact of a bill of this size probably isn't the best use of their time.
So what will be the impact of the CBO findings, and what will they say? Katie Glick joins us as senior political correspondent for the McClatchy newspaper chain and co-host of McClatchy's Beyond the Bubble podcast. Good to see you, Katie.
Good to be with you.
You know, reports say CBO will estimate that maybe 15 million people could lose insurance. That's 50% more than the 10 million predicted so far. Do we have any indication on what they will say?
So there's certainly all eyes on what that report will say, but in terms of just how many people may be at risk of losing insurance by their measurements. But certainly, as you noted, some Republicans and certainly White House officials, as well as, of course, Speaker Paul Ryan, have already been out there pre-butting what they think could be potentially some, at least on the optics front, some eyebrow-raising numbers when it comes to the CBO.
We're talking about those eyebrow-raising numbers. We got the $10 million people potentially could lose. They say that premiums go up 30% if you're 60 or older, make less than $30,000 a year. You would be hit especially hard. Talk about drug and mental health programs being cut. For the wealthy, you won't have to pay that Obamacare cut anymore. And 18 million people, according to one estimate, will lose Medicare. So how do the Republicans come out, and what are they saying to try and reassure people that they won't lose their coverage?
Sure. So we had, of course, again, Speaker Ryan out there on the Sunday shows today, as well as a number of other folks from administration officials and others, talking about why they feel that the CBO is an imperfect estimate. They're making the argument that their plan, you're going to have more people who have choices for more, their hope is more affordable healthcare options. And so they're saying it's sort of comparing apples to oranges in terms of what they consider a government mandate versus what they're hoping to do in terms of opening up the choices. But no question that Democrats see this as an opportunity for, a key messaging point. Certainly, as soon as we do get those official numbers from the CBO. I was speaking with one prominent Democratic operative who said, as a good liberal, I hope that this bill is not successful. But as a Democrat, certainly see some opportunities to make some key points here. If we do, in fact, see lots of people under threat of losing insurance, because of course this bill is contentious not only between Republicans and Democrats, but even within the Republican caucus itself, both in the House and in the Senate.
Really, I think against this. You mentioned the White House fighting back. The CBO was wrong about Obamacare. They have predicted 21 million would be covered. That's not true. About 11 million. So they were like 50% off. Here's what Paul Ryan said about trying to, jiggle up the numbers and estimate that. It's what he said earlier.
I can't answer that question. It's up to people. Here's the premise of your question. Are you going to stop mandating people buy health insurance? People are going to do what they want to do with their lives because we believe in individual freedom in this country. So the question is, are we providing a system where people have access to health insurance if they choose to do so? And the answer is yes.
Well, that's a key. People having access to a health system. Because one of the criticisms now, as you know, is that people may be covered, but being covered is not the same as actually having access to a doctor.
Right, exactly. And so, Speaker Ryan's point is certainly that they're taking a different approach, of course, than what we have under Obamacare. But, you mentioned Senator Paul earlier, and, there's a lot of dissent, again, even within the Republican caucus over the best way to ensure that people can actually, in fact, be covered under this new Republican proposal.
Do you think they'll reach consensus?
Well, I know a lot of Republicans certainly want to, because there are a lot of political consequences if they don't. Republicans have been running for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years on the idea that, once they get in power, where there's a Republican in the White House, if there are Republican majorities on Capitol Hill, they are going to be able to offer, a reasonable, successful alternative to Obamacare, which is, of course, something that was very unpopular with the Republican base. That messaging helped get to this point where we now do have a Republican White House and we do have Republican majorities on Capitol Hill. Yeah. And so, exactly. And so that, certainly that is something a lot of their voters want to see them come through. But the question is, are they going to be able to reach consensus and do so? And if not, as President Trump himself has warned, there may be some significant consequences in the midterm elections.
Yeah, everyone wants to see something about consequences. The president used the word bloodbath. Paul Ryan used the word bloodbath if something isn't done. There's a Wall Street Journal editorial right on exactly what you're saying about the Democrats and political consequences. They say, quote, the Democratic position of obstruction is simple and purely political. Oppose everything to add pressure on Republicans and hope the bill fails. Legislative defeats early in a new presidency and to beget more defeats. The Democrats hope to win a majority back in 2018 and fix Obamacare on their terms with Donald Trump or wait until 2021. Finally, Katie, what do you predict? Do you think that this is going to become another political football?
Well, I learned after the last election, dangerous certainly to make too many political predictions, but I think it's already become a political football. I mean, you see all kinds of divisions and battle lines being drawn within the Republican Party itself in terms of the best way to proceed in terms of replacing the health care law that they all agree want to see repealed. And of course, that doesn't even take into account the disagreements between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party on the broader issue of health care reform. So absolutely already a political football and an issue that I think is going to drive the conversation in Washington over the next couple of weeks for sure.
Well, to use a corny, hackney metaphor, it is a political football. Hopefully, we'll see if it gets to the goal line and if it is indeed, successful for all the people of this country. Katie Glick, thank you for joining us today.
Great to be with you. Thanks so much.
Of course. Arthur?
Thanks, Eric. Well, Iraqi forces gaining ground in the battle for Mosul. Officials say the Iraqis have retaken more than a third of West Mosul from ISIS since launching an assault on the area last month. Hundreds of thousands of civilians are still trapped with the militants inside the city. Connor Powell has more now from our Mideast Bureau.
It took more than 3 months for Iraqi forces to retake the eastern part of Mosul, but the push to reclaim the western half is moving much faster. With senior Iraqi commanders saying this weekend that the anti-ISIS coalition is where streets are narrow and armored vehicles cannot operate. The heavy fighting sending more than 60,000 civilians fleeing in the last 2 weeks alone. While the fight against ISIS in Iraq has gone slower than planned, it has made real progress in the last year with the help of the American-led coalition, which has provided both ground troops and air support. Militants who overran much of the country in 2014 have lost more than 60% of the territory they once controlled. And increasingly, top ISIS leaders are fleeing Iraq, heading back to neighboring Syria. The next phase of the fight against ISIS looks set to begin later this summer with an operation to retake Raqqa. This will be a big test of the anti-ISIS coalition, but it could also destroy the insurgent group as the world knows it. Arthel?
Connor, thank you so much. That is Connor Power in our Mideast Bureau. Thanks, Connor.
So for the Mideast to another region, North Korea. What does Kim Jong-un really want? You know, the dictatorship fired 4 ballistic missiles last week into the Sea of Japan. This is South Korea, while, man, they've been dealing with that political turmoil after the impeachment of its president. So how does all this volatility and uncertainty on the Korean peninsula affect us here at home? Our next guest will tell us.
Constipated? Fleet liquid glycerin is delivered straight to the source, so it...
State your business. We will have justice. The hour of battle is at hand.
Hello. Have a good one. What can I do for you? Safe travel.
couldn't resist, could you?
Time is money, friend!
The now former president of South Korea arriving at her private home after being impeached over a corruption scandal. The next president will be chosen in an election in May and could change the way South Korea treats its rival to the north. This as North Korea appears to make strides in its push for a nuclear weapon after a series of missile launches. So how should the Trump administration handle the uncertainty on the Korean Peninsula? For more on this now, we're going to bring in Dr. Jim Walsh, international security expert and member of the Security Studies program at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I was there recently, and what a fabulous campus. So impressive.
Thank you, Arthel.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes. Let's start here. Does the U.S. have a place in the new potential political realignment between the North and the South? And if so, what is it?
No, absolutely. The U.S. and South Korea are tied by treaties. The U.S. has three big treaties: NATO, the treaty with Japan, the treaty with South Korea. Those stand above everything else, really, because we are obliged to come to the aid of our partners if they're attacked. And we have thousands of troops there in South Korea. And so whoever is elected, that new president and President Trump has to find a way to work together. That always hasn't happened in the past. U.S.-South Korean relations, given the very situation we are in right now, I certainly hope that's what's going to happen.
And what about China? What is China's role? What do you think it should be?
Yeah, it's a great question. There is no solving this problem without China. I mean, I could say that 15 times for the rest of the interview. There is no solving this problem without China. And so the question is, how do you get that to happen? So the U.S. and China are going to have to find a way to talk to each other and cooperate. Neither of them want North Korea to go crazy and develop nuclear weapons to threaten the entire region. Actually, that works against Chinese self-interest. The question is, China and the U.S. have a lot of problems right now in our relationship. And the question is whether we can see past those or work around them to cooperate on North Korea. Because without China, there ain't no getting this right. And I think that's agenda item number one, if you ask me.
Yeah, but now you got nukes. North Korea looks like they're going to have nukes pointed at Japan, pointed at China, pointed out wherever they want them to go.
Exactly.
So in what direction could the new leadership in South Korea go with North Korea and China that could be beneficial in some way to South Korea?
Well, I think from the get-go, just at one level, it's important that South Korea have a president. They've had this domestic crisis. You know, that's essentially South Korea's been missing in action, sitting on the bench when these important things are happening. So it's great that South Korea will finally have a real leader and a real government that can stand in and be part of the process of dealing with this. Now, it may be, the polls suggest, and we all know polls are shaky, the polls suggest that perhaps the liberal candidate in the South Korean politics may win after 9 years of conservative rule. In which case, again, unfortunately, in U.S.-Korean relations, we have a situation where South Korea is leaning one way towards engagement, and the U.S. is leaning in another way towards something else. But I don't think President Trump has set his policy yet. They are having a policy review. Some things have been leaked, but I think basically anything is possible, and I'm glad they're taking their time and thinking this through, because this is really a dangerous situation.
And where are the political and security landmines in all of this?
Well, Arthel, you know, in some ways things are always the same, right? The North Koreans are testing. That happens all the time, especially when we have war exercises. But in some ways, this is a very, very unusual, and I mean badly unusual, time. You have, again, new leadership in Washington. They're still getting their sea legs. Whoever is president of South Korea, they're going to be brand new into office. we have basically everyone is arguing with each other. China and the U.S. are arguing. South Korea and China are arguing. China and North Korea are arguing. North Korea and Malaysia. What that means is, and normally you'd think, oh, that's great that China and North Korea aren't getting along. That's a good thing. But it means that North Korea is increasingly isolated. And if they are isolated and no one's talking to them, they could make a mistake, and a mistake could escalate very quickly. So I do worry about that.
Oh, excellent points, Dr. Jim Walsh. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Great to see you, Arthel.
Thank you. Eric?
Thank you.
Well, an American citizen goes to Iran to visit his ill mother. He's not coming back for 18 years. Robin Shahini of San Diego, reportedly in prison there. We will tell you about his heartfelt plea to President Trump and his fellow Americans. He begs, do not leave me alone.
I read the newspaper every morning at my kitchen table, and probably 5 times in the morning as I'm drinking my coffee, I think, what is that? And I want this to be the show where we answer the question, what is that? And the person who said that, come on to explain what that is. I want Tucker Carlson Tonight to be a show that I would watch.
Weeds, nature's boomerang. At Roundup, we know they keep coming back.
Here are some headlines we're following now. Days after a major windstorm cut power to more than 1 million people in Michigan, utility crews are still working to restore electricity to more than 250,000 customers. Two Michigan utilities say it's among their biggest power outages ever. Federal investigators say an ethanol-fueled fire at the site of a train derailment in northwestern Iowa is still burning after nearly 36 hours. And illusionist Chris Angel returning to the stage in Vegas tonight after reportedly losing consciousness during a dangling escape stunt at his Mind Freak live show Friday. TMZ reporting Angel will go on tonight as scheduled at the Luxor.
One of our own, an American citizen with a plea for our help. Robin Shahini is reportedly serving almost 2 decades in an Iranian prison, prosecuted for what his family says are political purposes. He is one of 5 Americans believed held now by Iran. His family says he has a plea for President Trump. He is a 46-year-old San Diego PhD student who has a plea for assault. Robin Shahini was reportedly sentenced to 18 years in prison on charges of aiding a hostile government, the U.S., because Iran says he met with regime opponents and criticized the Tehran government on Facebook. His family says he is now on a hunger strike in prison, hoping to be released or will die behind bars.
I see that because after changing the condition between Iran and United States, they did worse to my brother.
Shahini says he went to Iran to visit his mother, who is suffering from Alzheimer's. In this open letter provided by his family, he writes, quote, I ask myself and my fellow American neighbors, where is the justice I have come to associate with America? This charge is unjust, and the Iranian government intended to commit this wrong against me, an innocent American citizen, for political purposes. I ask of you, please do not let Iranian government use me. His girlfriend, Seville, did not want her face shown for fear of retribution.
I'm asking all the U.S. citizens and U.S. again administration to help, because I don't think it's going to last long with this situation, with the all health issues is going on.
Lisa Daftari, editor of the website The Foreign Desk, who has followed Shahini's plight, says Iranian authorities intended for his incarceration to serve as a wider warning.
The Iranian regime is delivering a stern message to Iranians living abroad not to get involved in political activity, not to speak out about the regime, not to convert to Christianity. And they want Iranians to know that they are in fact being watched.
Seville says she is worried.
He's a hostage. He's hostage, and because he's American, you think you can do whatever you want. But this way, just because the Iranian government has this kind of reputation.
The White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer says the administration is aware of Robin Shahini's plight. The State Department meanwhile tells us that the safety of Americans abroad is a top priority. Yet it has issued a travel warning about the risk of detention or arrest for U.S. citizens who visit Iran. We also asked the Iranian mission to the United Nations about Mr. Shahini's case, but they did not comment. And we will be right back.
Cod extravaganza is here at Long John Silver's. Try our new coastal beer.
Target.
News channel on Sirius XM. Your favorite shows on channel 114. Plus every story, every 15 minutes. Fox News headlines 24/7. Channel 115.
Well, whatever your golf handicap may be, there is one course where we bet it's a lot higher.
Yeah, golfers teeing off this weekend in the ice golf tournament on a huge frozen lake in Siberia. All of the golf balls are red, the better to find them, of course.
How about that? I used to go fishing for the golf balls, and you can sell them back to the country club.
Oh.
I'm not doing that there in Siberia.
No, that's a bit cold.
They're too cold, yeah.
A bit cold. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Harris Faulkner is up next with the Fox Report, and we do appreciate you spending your time with the Fox News Channel. Thank you.
I'm Harris Faulkner. You're watching the Fox Report. The push to give Americans better health care insurance tops the news, with reports of tough negotiations inside political parties, leading the Republicans and the majority in the House and Senate, as you know, on the precipice of doing what President Trump promised. Obamacare. As we enter week 2 of the battle on the Hill over health care, it is raising concerns about what will actually happen to the Republicans' American Health Care Act. Here's the critical next step. The Congressional Budget Office set to score the bill. We could see that report within days. It will estimate how many people would likely be covered and cost. Some critics of the plan are suggesting the CBO score will only strengthen their case against the bill. Republican supporters, though, are dismissing that claim, and they did so on the Sunday talk shows. And the White House is busy trying to drum up support for the new legislation. The president planning to attend a rally in Nashville, Tennessee to pitch it this week. Our Garrett Tenney has more from Washington. Garrett?
Well, Harris, there's a lot of political capital going into this push, and administration officials have said that the president and vice president are fully committed to getting this bill passed. Yesterday, Mike Pence was in Kentucky rallying support for the plan, and on Wednesday, President Trump is heading to Nashville to sell it directly to the voters as well. Today, though, the White House sent National Economic Advisor Gary Cohn onto Fox News Sunday to defend the American Health Care Act. In his first Sunday show appearance, Cohn insisted that under the GOP's plan, everyone who wants to have health insurance will be able to, including those who gain coverage under Obamacare.
We're offering coverage to everyone. If you're on Medicaid today, you're going to stay on Medicaid. If you're covered under an employee-sponsored plan, you're going to continue to be covered under an employee-sponsored plan. If you fall into that middle group, we're going to provide tax credits so you can go out and buy a plan, and buy a plan that you want, not a plan that Washington is determining that you should buy.
And those tax credits are a point of contention for conservative lawmakers who say that they are essentially the same as Obamacare subsidies. And speaking of those disagreements, Cohn said that while the president has fully supported the current plan, he's very open to suggestions on how to improve it. Harris?
Well, I know Freedom Caucus members, Chairman Mark Meadows, for example, has been saying that they need more time to get into that bill and make some changes. How hopeful or certain are conservatives that those changes will happen?
Well, now that it's become more clear that Republicans won't be able to pass the health care plan without support of the conservative Freedom Caucus members, Republican leadership has somewhat softened their tone a bit and say that they are now open to negotiations to work out those differences. Now, some of the key points of disagreement that they'll have to work through are the tax credits that we mentioned, as well as several of the Obamacare taxes and regulations that will be left in place under the current plan. And on Fox News Sunday, Congressman Jim Jordan described the current plan as falling short of what Republicans have been promising voters over the last 2 elections.
Remember what we told the voters. We said we were going to repeal Obamacare. As the speaker said, it's not a binary choice. We'd like a chance to amend it, change it, and make it consistent with the message we told the voters.
And Jordan said that the House Freedom Caucus is working on putting together a list of its demands and that it plans to share that with the president on Tuesday when they meet at the White House for some bowling and pizza, as well as negotiations.
I love both those things. Thank you very much. We'll cover the news on that as it happens. Now let's go to the ultimatum from a bipartisan group of lawmakers to the Trump administration. Members of the House Intelligence Committee want evidence to support President Trump's wiretap claim by tomorrow. But one Democrat is asking for answers and says the administration likely would not face consequences if the deadline were not to be met. Kristen Fisher is live at the White House. We can hear sounds there, live on location. And Kristen, we're looking at any indication whether the White House will comply with these committee members' requests to give them evidence by tomorrow.
No indication of that yet, Harris. And the bigger question here is, does any evidence actually exist? Well, today, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee said that he doesn't think it does.
I don't expect we're going to see any evidence of this either. I agree with Tom Cotton. There are one of two possibilities here. Either the president quite deliberately, for some reason, made up this charge, or perhaps more disturbing, the president really believes this.
Just to recap, the charge is that former President Barack Obama ordered the wiretapping of Trump Tower during the election. The former president has denied the charge. So has his former director of national intelligence. Even the current FBI director, James Comey, has reportedly asked the Justice Department to publicly reject the president's claims. Now, Congressman Schiff says that he plans to ask Comey about that directly when he testifies before the full committee later this month. Harris?
Well, I know it's not just Democrats. Republicans also have been critical of the president on this very issue. And if they weren't critical, they at least were silent last week.
Yeah, and today, Senator John McCain had some very strong words for President Trump. He essentially said that the president has two options. He can either retract the claim, or he can provide evidence to both Congress and the public to back up that claim.
I have no reason to believe that the charge is true, but I also believe that the President of the United States could clear this up in a minute. All he has to do is pick up the phone, call the director of the CIA, director of national intelligence, and say, okay, what happened? Because they certainly should know whether the former President of the United States was wiretapping Trump Towers.
Now, in addition to this Monday deadline, tomorrow President Trump will hold his first full cabinet meeting, minus the two that have yet to be confirmed, the Secretary of Agriculture and the Secretary of Labor. Then on Tuesday, President Trump will meet with the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel. And on Wednesday, he's going to be traveling to Tennessee for a big rally in Nashville. And then on Thursday, the budget will drop and his new travel ban is set to take effect. So another very busy week as President Trump heads into the second half of his first 100 days in office.
I was just going to say 50 days in and the next 5 look just as busy as the first 45. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right, millions of people are tuning in to see the news tonight about the weather. A dangerous winter storm system is headed to the northeast. And this is what we're already seeing. Storm watches issued at this time, expected to stretch all across the region. As communities brace for possible blizzard conditions, that map that you see may become our reality in the next few hours. And if you look at the different bands, that's 12 inches to 18 inches of snow. Let's bring in now, actually forecasters are saying if you're traveling in this region, it will be very difficult. Some airlines are moving ahead of what's coming, offering no-cost waivers for flights on Tuesday and Wednesday. And so this is just coming to us. If you plan to travel this week, you might want to check out those waivers and save some cash. Now let's bring in meteorologist Adam Watts from the Fox Extreme Weather Center. I was extremely anxious to get to you because that map behind you is daunting. And it's really the first time this season that we've seen that much of it.
Yeah, this is the first really big system we've seen so far this year, and it's stretching over a huge area, as you just said. This is the pink is what you're looking at. That is the warning, which means, the conditions are there that we're pretty certain this is going to be happening for us. Stretching for Virginia, getting all the way up into Maine. And if I can take you a little bit tighter, you do notice just a little bit of green there surrounding New York City and then stretching up the coast. This is a blizzard watch, which means winds, incredibly windy conditions would be near whiteout conditions for us getting into Tuesday. I'm going to time that out for you in just a minute. But what's setting this all up? Obviously, very cold winter weather. Temperatures currently sitting at 28 degrees. Farther inland, you're getting down into the teens. This cold weather, this cold air mass is going to stay in place as we see some moisture running in here, really getting late into Monday, more so into Tuesday. Here's what we're looking at on our national maps. Mostly clear for now, but there's actually two systems we're paying attention to. One right now dropping snow. This is going to combine with another system in the southeast, lift its way up the east coast. Eventually, we're going to see that here on the east coast, but you're looking at snow now falling in Wisconsin, back to Minnesota, northern portions of Iowa, and this is at least partly that system that's going to be moving this direction. Let me time it out for you here in our future forecast, and this is really going to tell you when we're expecting this to set up. You see this moving its way down, also a low pressure system lifting up the coast. These combine, and we're getting into early Tuesday morning. That's now 3 in the morning. Beginning to see some of that snow moving into New York City area, running its way up the coastal region. continuing throughout the day on Tuesday, running you into Tuesday evening before eventually clearing off closer to Wednesday evening. But by this point, we've seen bands and bands of snow and very strong winds moving onshore. So yeah, so this is going to be a big one. How much are we talking about? And this is what it really boils down to. Take a look at some of these numbers for us. You start to see these really deep purples. That's indicating maybe 2 feet of snow or more. You get into some major metropolitan areas like New York or Philadelphia. I think at least a foot, 18 inches is going to be safe bet on all of these areas. So yeah, this is going to be a really big snow. And then we also want to point out, and here real quick, winds. This is, again, this system moving up. Some of these colors indicating winds 50 to maybe 70 miles an hour. And that's when it becomes a whiteout, and that's when you really see some issues with this.
Yeah, I know the viewers hear me in the background saying stop, because when you look into the future, Adam, things happen. And that is very daunting. Later in the newscast, I want to bring you back because I know that these warnings and watches get updated about every hour. And so we'll hit it at the bottom or the top of the next hour so that we know what's going on as well. It's going to be an interesting 24 hours. Good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, there's still a lot to watch, so we'll be here.
Thank you. Well, right now, the Trump administration is getting ready to unveil its first budget proposal. We've been talking about it so far this hour. It's expected to pump billions of dollars more into the military, while slashing spending at a number of other agencies. Some of them are dealing with national security. And the president's second executive order on immigration and travel to the United States is about to take effect. But a new legal challenge could stop it in its tracks. Stay close.
There are still constitutional problems with core provisions of this revised executive order. And the president does not get to decide if a new executive order is different enough to be clear from that underlying injunction. The court decides that.
What Superpower does for me is it keeps the food out before those.
President Trump's revised executive order on extreme vetting for people coming into the United States is set to go into effect this Thursday, March 16th. The new document applies to travelers from 6 countries down from the original 7. And lawsuits keep coming. A handful of state attorneys general are expected to file amended complaints against the ban tomorrow. And that could prompt the same federal judge who halted the first executive order to issue yet another stay. Will Carr is live from our West Coast newsroom. And Will, has the judge weighed in at all on any of this?
Well, Harris, on Friday, the federal judge said that because of procedural issues, he won't make an immediate ruling on whether his restraining order applies to the new travel ban. The revised order will block new visas for travelers from Somalia, Iran, Syria, Sudan, Libya, and Yemen. Unlike the first order, though, current visa holders won't be impacted, and Iraq has been taken off the list. Hawaii has already filed a suit challenging the executive order, and a number of other states plan to file challenges this week as well.
We here in the state of Hawaii, we care about the security of our state, but don't bring us back to a time that occurred prior to the 1960s.
We saw mass protests at airports across the country after the first ban immediately went into effect. The revised ban has a cushion period, and as we learned as a result, Hawaii is set for a court hearing on its challenge on Wednesday, one day before the ban goes into effect.
I understand the 2 areas that these attorneys are hoping they can prove this is not constitutional based on is that 2 parts. Ban on refugees and travel from 6 predominantly Muslim countries. They're going to hang their want for a victory on those 2 areas because they say that they were also in the original ban. We'll see how it shakes out. I am curious to know how much the revised order has placated the critics from the Obama administration because they've been very vocal.
Yeah, that's right. Not much. On Friday, more than 130 foreign policy experts, many of whom are from the Obama administration, wrote a letter to President Trump condemning the ban. Part of the letter states, bans like those included in this order are harmful to U.S. national security and beneath the dignity of our great nation. But the administration has maintained this is all about keeping Americans safe. Take a listen to Secretary of State Rex Tillerson.
While no system can be made completely infallible, the American people can have high confidence we are identifying ways to improve the vetting process and thus keep terrorists from entering our country.
The administration feels the revised ban will hold up against legal scrutiny this time. Harris.
All right, we'll watch it. Thank you very much. Will, always good to see you. And again, let's talk money. The Trump administration is set to unveil its first formal budget proposal to Congress. The president is promising more money for the military. So we'll take a look at where the cuts will come from. And will lawmakers get behind it? And good news for the fight against the ISIS savages. New reports emerge. The terror army's last major stronghold in Iraq, Mosul, is now surrounded. We're going to get an expert, a Green Beret, to talk to me about that. Stay glued. We're coming back.
Anything meant to stand needs a stable foundation. Body with proper foot support can...
President Trump's family played a prominent role on the campaign, but his sons and daughters have kept a pretty low profile since their dad took office. The president's oldest son, Donald Trump Jr., spoke last night at a Reagan Day dinner in Texas, and he said he is proud of his dad's work so far.
I want to make sure that my kids grow up in the same America that all of our kids do. I want to make sure that they have those same opportunities, that same freedoms, and that's so important.
Also, Ivanka Trump is becoming more active and visible in Washington, meeting with lawmakers from both political parties recently, advocating for reducing the cost of child care for working families. Well, the president's new budget proposal is expected to call for dramatic cuts to nearly all areas of the federal government, from the State Department to HUD to the EPA. But the plan also includes tens of billions of dollars more for the Pentagon. Rebuilding the military, as you know, is one of the president's key campaign promises. But with so much change, in this case cash, on the table, will Congress buy it? Lauren Blanchard has more from Washington.
Hi, Harris. Well, the government ran a $587 billion deficit last year. And now President Trump promises to do a lot more with less. On Thursday, he is planning to send his proposed budget to Congress that could make politically painful cuts to domestic programs in order to move money to security issues and cut back on waste.
When they need to spend money somewhere, they have to cut it from somewhere else. These are tough decisions, but the president has shown he's ready, willing, and able to make these tough decisions.
Cuts would hit the EPA and education departments and housing and urban development. The White House also considering cuts to the Coast Guard, TSA, and FEMA, as well as grants to local and state governments that rely on federal funding.
The idea of cutting agencies that are contributing to border security at the same time you're trying to strengthen border security needs to be just dealt with a little more constructively. And I think the budget passback process is one of the tools to use to make that happen.
The big winner in President Trump's plan is the Pentagon, with a $54 billion boost for defense spending. The president has promised to rebuild the military and defend the border. The president has promised to leave Medicare and Social Security virtually untouched. But another question the White House and Congress must consider is how to fund the GOP healthcare plan. Harris.
Lauren, thank you. It is getting nasty between two of our NATO allies, Turkey and the Netherlands. Protesters clashed with police in the streets. They had to use water cannons, so they say. Well, at least they did. Against those citizens. Now Turkey's president is reaching out to international organizations. What does all this mean for America? And success to tell you about in Mosul, Iraq.
It's not just the territory we've taken back, but most importantly, it's the people that we've helped free.
The Islamic State savages said to be surrounded in that key Iraq city. What's next in the fight against that army?
I'm Val, the orange money retirement squirrel from Voya. I represent the money you save.
I've been expecting you. Go in